Hello everyone. This was a good week of chapters as we finally got the end of Wano, as well as a couple of other major questions, quote unquote, answered in this week of chapters. So now we'll be starting off with One Piece, chapter 1057, and this was a good chapter showing the end of Wano, with a storyteller narrating the events to a large crowd to retell what had happened and the new history of Wano to signal the beginning of a new age, as we see Momo chase after the Straw Hats to say goodbye, and we learn that Yamato is not joining the crew, which shocked me given how 2 weeks ago the last chapter seemingly ended. I had assumed, as I think a lot of people assumed, that they would be joining the Straw Hats. But that's not to be the case, as Yamato wants to more or less follow directly in Oden's tracks, where they want to travel around Wano first before going to sea, so that they can get a little bit more worldly experience, as they've more or less been trapped inside of Onigashima for many, many years. So that's good for Yamato. I don't particularly mind. I think it works out better, and at this point, the Straw Hats aren't gaining another member, which I think is fine. I think Jinbei being the last one, simply because he had promised to join, was a fine decision. So now we're locked in on this group of characters, which I think helps tell the final bits of the story. We then see that Momo arrives. Momo does not want Luffy and Ko to go. He's still a child. Luffy then gives him a flag and more or less claims Wano as his, leading to the continued growth of the Straw Hat Empire that's slowly but surely forming between Fishman and now Wano. I can imagine Luffy's territory will continue to grow in the same vein that Whitebeard's did over time. Momo seems to accept this, as they're still friends even with the Straw Hats leaving. So we see the Straw Hats leave, as Kid then goads Luffy and Law into taking the more dangerous route, because that's what Kid's doing, and the three of them just can't let the others win. So their rivalry is continuing to build, which I really like, as they're setting off on their next adventure into the unknown. We then get a final pseudo clarification on what happened with Orochi's ultimate demise, with the storyteller as well as Hiyori playing a pun on Oden's final words, saying that the Komarazumi, I think, Orochi's clan, were born to burn, and thus ends the great Wano adventure. The curtain closes as the new age of samurai begins, thanks to Luffy defeating Kaido and Big Mom in Wano. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter an A. I thought it was a good chapter to end everything on, a nice tidy recap, and a finishing bow to this very long arc. I think the arc as a whole was good for a battle arc, like this massive war that happened and a massive battle. I thought it was good. It was probably something he would have wanted to do with, say, Alabasta, because this felt very Alabasta-esque, more so than even Dressrosa did, as this felt like the prince, in Momo's case, or the princess in Vivi's case, had to overcome quite the obstacles to re-get the hearts and minds of the people. The Straw Hats were more or less just warriors in this fight. Their kind of roles in this were nothing more than fighters. They didn't have a real personal stake in it, outside of the fact that they wanted to defeat the Yonko, as well as they wanted to help a friend. So their involvement in this story was always going to take a back seat. This was never going to be their storied arc. That's coming next, as the next major war, the battle for Laugh Tale, is going to be 100% the Straw Hats' goal arc. This is going to be their story compared to every other big battle war arc that's happened in One Piece. Even with Marineford, where it was Luffy was trying to save Ace, it was never about Luffy, really. or even aced for that matter. It was the battle between Whitebeard and the Marines. So every war arc has never really had Luffy as the main character, the main plot driver, the main reason that things are happening. He's always just been an agent of chaos that pushed everything forward. So with the arc that divided the whole community, it seems, with it being over, I thought it was a good arc, had some fun bits, had some highs, had some lows, like every arc does. And overall, I thought it was just good. I thought it was a good arc, a good battle, good to see different strengths and weaknesses for everyone involved, and I don't think this is the end for pretty much any of them. I think Kaido and Big Mom return at Laugh Tale. We'll end up seeing Shanks. The final battle is going to be immense and ridiculous, with pretty much every character that's ever existed getting one last hurrah in that final battle. Will it be bloated and messy? Yes, it probably will be. But it'll be fun, and that's sort of what the whole thing One Piece has always been. Fun, not like peak fiction. It's a fun, goofy adventure for pirates with superpowers. Take it too seriously, and then you lose the point of fun in One Piece. So now we're on to Black Clover, chapter 334, and this was a good chapter showing just how villainous Lucius can be as he continues to taunt and battle Asta, as we see Asta has grown more powerful in the about year time skip that's happened. They fight back and forth, though it looks like Asta can't quite get the upper hand, and Lucius can't either. It's then shown that Lucius has some good hand-to-hand combat, like Lucifero, which takes Asta off guard at first, but Asta continues to have his advantage of anti-magic until Lucius decides to pull his ultimate villain card and show that he can corrupt, quote-unquote, anyone. He has some sort of soul magic that is able to cleanse demonic power and cleanse people's souls. So he turns into his devil form, but then is able to cleanse it and purify it into something entirely different. And eventually he then grabs Sister Lily and corrupts her, quote unquote, or purifies her into a being of his vision, what he wants all of humanity to become, and she wants Asta dead now. This, hearing it from Sister Lily, causes him to hesitate and pause, and Lucius takes advantage of that hesitation and wounds him, slicing right through his chest as Asta begins to fall. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing Lucius show just how overwhelmingly powerful he is, and seeing the growth of Asta was also good, seeing as how he was able to more or less keep up, but isn't quite there yet. Now, the next few chapters should be very exciting to see what avenue this is going to take, because I wonder how injured Asta is, or if he's just going to pop right back up and try to continue the fight, or if he's done for the moment and Lucius kind of starts going nuts. The next few chapters are going to be important in setting the tone for this arc. How many people will be corrupted / purified? How many people will resist? Is there a way to resist? Is there a way to turn them back? Many questions, and hopefully a lot of answers in the chapters to come, but so far this arc looks to be extremely exciting, at least in my opinion. Now we're on to Mission Yozakura Family, chapter 143, and this was a good chapter, seeing as how the mission quote-unquote failed, as Momo was able to escape with Futaba and Shinzo, having used his explosive bomb grenade that would have destroyed the entire headquarters had the oldest brother not been able to contain the explosion within his spider's web. We then see that the eldest brother plans on having a family meeting with the rest of the family to figure out what to do next to save their two siblings, as well as get rid of Momo. The battle here is going to be very interesting to see how many more are corrupted by the end by Momo, as I imagine the only one who might not have any issue is the main character. maybe the main female lead character. However, the next couple of chapters will be interesting on how they handle it, because it should be interesting to see if they move on again, like they almost always do as time passes, as they try to find Momo again, or is Momo going to stay on the offensive and keep trying to push to infect the entire family to love him again. So the next few chapters should be very interesting. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing Momo succeed, as well as see how unhinged he is in the fact that he's willing to infect all of his children, the living members of his family, to love him again instead of trying to stop what he's doing, or I don't even know what he could try to do to redeem himself. He seemingly is beyond redemption at this point, as he is just going batshit nuts, which makes it very entertaining to see his insanity continue to spiral, as he sees his best option to save his family is to indoctrinate them, as it seems as though their infection doesn't change anything but their perspective of Momo, where they will defend him staunchly and love him unconditionally, but otherwise everything else about their personality stays somewhat the same, though they seemed a little bit more aggressive, as the battle between Futaba and the eldest brother seemed that they were about to get a bit more chippy than they usually would have, and Shinzo seemed a bit more aggressive himself in his powerful displays of defense. So we'll see how this goes. The battles should be very interesting, as now there's an element of brainwashing to the final conflict here. I'm also curious at how this whole manga ends, because I could see this ending with this arc, but I could also see this continuing well beyond this arc. So I'm very curious at how the next stage of this story is going to take. I wonder what it's going to do. Now we're on to Undead Unluck, chapter 123, and this was a good chapter showing the why and how of Andy's quote-unquote birth, as we see the flashback of how things were not going great for Juiz and Victor, as well as how Victor's love for Juiz blinded him, as he had lost faith in everything and he couldn't really watch Juiz suffer any further. So they look for the artifact Remember, and she wanted to basically go into the next loop with a head start, which was that the Remember artifact can almost bring everyone with them, I think, or it might be that their memories stay alive. It's kind of like a save point. I don't think it would save it right then and there, but it would be that everything they know would still happen to a degree, but I'm not quite certain on that. They said it. I'm clearly too dumb to comprehend all of it, but what I gathered was that they kind of will remember who everyone was, and everyone will remember what's going on. They won't need to convince anyone of anything. They'll know from the get-go, seemingly. Or they can reset someone or something, and that's what Juiz ended up having to do for Victor, because Victor had grown disillusioned with the whole thing, having lived 455 million years trying to do this over and over again, and they struggled mightily, as Juiz just couldn't figure out a way to win. Every time they'd have to use the arc, and she had went through 90 some odd times, and finally Victor had enough. They were going through, they had finally found the Remember artifact, what seemed like a world war of some kind, and Victor decided to take that opportunity to finally stop Juiz, because it seems as though she's immortal in terms of lifespan. She stops aging and can't die of old age. However, she could still be killed and injured, as we saw with her arm being destroyed. So Victor wanted to kill her and let her restart, go back to normal, leaving it that she will end up not coming with them and they'll have to find her, which is an interesting thing to have happen, especially as now there's a major decision, because as Victor tries to kill her to let her live a normal life instead of suffering through trying to save everyone, Juiz decides to stop him and save her own life by using the artifact on him to reset him, and that's how Andy was quote-unquote born. So that might have been the loop before. or something like that. I'm not sure. Maybe even in this loop, Andy was born. I'm not 100% certain. But it was at a point in time where Andy then was born and woke up with the artifact stuck in his head, and he goes and does what he needs to do. We know the rest of Andy's sort of story as he's struggling with the fact that he's undead, but doesn't remember anything. And so we find out all about that, and now it leads to a major conundrum. What are they going to do with the artifact? Are they going to have it that they can have everyone remember what happened and kind of be able to take advantage of that going forward? But in the effect of doing that, Andy more or less doesn't exist. Or are they going to keep Andy but then have to struggle and try to get everyone to remember again? There's an interesting dynamic here, and I'm very curious at what choice is made. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter an A, just for the fact that they're leaving it up in the air on what direction the story is going to go. Because truth be told, neither option is bad in any way, shape, or form. If they decide to keep Andy, the story then becomes, can Fuko convince everyone and do what Juiz took 91 times to do and failed? Can Fuko actually succeed? Or do they take the advantage that they never had before and hope maybe Andy is able to stay even with Victor technically coming back? Or does Andy go away himself and Victor now share? Do they combine? What happens? There's a lot of interest there. There's a lot of unique ways this could go, as well as the fact that they're going to be going to the next timeline soon, which is very exciting in its own right to see what way this story is going to continue. So there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of fun things that could happen in the coming weeks, and I'm looking forward to all of them. Now we're on to Mashle, Magic and Muscles, chapter 120, and this was a good chapter showing the ultimate victory for Rain and Finn, as it seems as though Rain and Finn were able to win thanks to Finn's miraculous second line awakening and allowing Finn to heal Rain more rapidly than the frat guy. The frat guy was losing his ability to heal quickly thanks to Rain being as merciless as he was, never stopping, and eventually the frat guy ran out of mana and he could not heal, and ultimately Rain was able to kill him. Now, it seems as though the frat guy was under the impression he might be able to be revived, and I'm curious at that prospect, because that could make all these fights not moot, but it does mean that some of the injuries that might happen might end up being more costly than we think. But in this case, it doesn't really matter unless Finn gets in trouble with mana later, but for now, Rain and Finn won. So now we move on to the next fight, which is Dot and Lance versus the insane pudding gentleman, as Lance and Dot continue to fight amongst themselves, as we find out just how insane and crazy the pudding guy is. He's obsessed with seeing people's face in distorted and distressed ways, as well as being weird, is the easiest way to describe the pudding guy. Eventually we find out that the pudding he gave Dot was laced with some sort of virus that caused Dot pain, and Lance got seemingly more affected by that than I think Dot had realized or something. He got real angry at it and wanted to fight the pudding guy on his own. Eventually Dot relented, and so now we'll see the pudding guy versus Lance one-on-one. So that should be pretty interesting to see that fight go that way, see if they'll need to work together or if Lance can do it on his own. But for now, things are looking uneven. It looks like they're gonna struggle mightily here. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing Rain and Finn win their battle, and to see what the state of another fight is in, seeing as how Lance and Dot are just more or less beginning their battle. Now, I do wonder what the other fights are looking like. I can imagine they're not going great, but we don't know yet. That's left up in the air. So for now, this was good, seeing that now we get the next battle, and we're not taking up too much time for each battle, though I imagine this one could go a while. So now we're on to Sakamoto Days, chapter 83, and this was a good chapter showing Shin accepting the fact that he's not quite ready to be even close to Sakamoto's level, as he and the invisible guy argue whether or not Shin needs a weapon. And so Shin then accepts this and decides to specialize, and he finds a powered gauntlet, and the gauntlet is seemingly able to charge up an enormous attack which has some massive recoil spoil, but there's too much of a delay. And unless someone can see the future, you wouldn't be able to use the weapon very skillfully. Lucky for everyone, Shin can see the future, so it should work out pretty well there, as we also got to see that the invisible guy makes a lot of experimental weapons and so on that he then was able to test out on Shin, which was fun for him, not so much for Shin. And I wouldn't say bond, but you could see they were starting to connect to a degree, as well as we get to see that Akira has accompanied them, and we'll see if maybe she gets a weapon. But for now, we get to see that the three of them are preparing to try their best at winning, as each one is getting a more specialized weapon because the invisible guy is in fact an ace weapons maker. We also got to see that the rest of Slur's group are trying to figure out what they're going to do, as the main villain, quote unquote, of the last arc, the weird henchman, wants to invade the JCC school, but the deer head guy explains it's on an island that is nearly impossible to get to. We then see that Slur has complete faith in their infiltrating student, and we then get to see the weird masochist guy also confirm he has full faith in the student infiltrator. To say the least, things are looking like they're going to start ramping up soon, as this chapter just continued to stir the pot and set up for some exciting future battles to come, as it looks as though Shin is going to get an upgrade, as well as making new friends and teammates in the process. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing Shin and the rest of his group continue to quote-unquote bond, as well as level up to a degree, as well as we get to see more sinisterness with Slur's group of weird henchmen. So for now, things are looking exciting as it's continuing to simmer, and things should continue to grow more and more tense as we get closer to the eventual winner, quote unquote, the one person or group that eventually finds the database they're all looking for. So that was all of the major chapters. It was a good week with many very good chapters amongst this particular group, with One Piece's final chapter for Wano, which was good, as well as Black Clover showing their villain is going to be very villainous. Mission Yozakura family continuing to really be carried by Momo's insanity. Undead Unluck giving us a very good flashback chapter, setting up a potential big time decision. Mashle having a major victory, and Sakamoto continuing to have character development and growth for its characters. So now we're on to everything else, and My Hero was fine, Jujutsu Kaisen was fine, Blue Box was fine, and Earthchild was fine. Doron was good, seeing as how the villain arrived and they achieved their goal of releasing this ancient, uber-powerful Mononoke, only to find that it's insane and is just going to rampage until the seeming major villain absorbs that Mononoke and grows infinitely more powerful. And so the main hero and the main leader of the samurais are going to have to try to destroy the main villain here. I could see this ending right here, right now, with the next chapter having it that the main character is able to perform whatever strategy they need to win. I could also see this going on for a long while. I could also just see this battle ending and then the story continuing on with another problem. So there's a lot this story can do, but I just have no idea what direction it's going to go, because it could end tomorrow, it could end 4 years from now, it could end a month from now. It's too all over the place to try to get a foothold on whether it's going to survive a long time or be done very soon. But the villain so far has been interesting and the story has been entertaining enough. Aliens Area was good, as we get to see another mission, and the first one with the main character using his new contact lenses to be able to see an invisible alien who was shoplifting because they were too poor, because they arrived on Earth wanting to see ninjas. Didn't quite work out for him, but he was able to achieve his goal by seeing the main characters here work in a ninja-esque fashion. So now the alien felt satisfied that he had seen a ninja-esque thing. The chapter was cute, it was fine. It was good seeing, just again, more work just happening, little cases happening all over the place while we get to learn more about the world. So hopefully it keeps it up. and it's a fun series thus far. Super Smartphone was good as the concept of the story is okay, the premise as a whole with the smartphones and everything, but I think the execution of the story is excellent thus far, with us learning all of the other smartphone users as everyone gets a notification that a smartphone was taken away. We then also find out that the main character did in fact mess up by allowing the big guy to be arrested because the main villain was able to kill him in the prison. We find out through the main character calling the main detective, and we learn that the big guy is in fact dead, as well as many other people in the prison. So a first major loss for the main character, having it that he miscalculated how ruthless the villain was going to be. We find out also how if you make a smartphone user renounce their smartphone, you gain a lot of points. You even gain points by killing a smartphone user, former or active. So there's a lot of intrigue and now a lot of reasons for them all to fight each other. So the story itself and the way that it's written thus far is very good, in my opinion. I think the premise almost holds it back, but it could keep it from fumbling too much, as this is going to be a greater game of cat and mouse between all 11 remaining smartphone users. So it'll be very interesting to see which ones align with who in the end, because now they're all realizing you're going to need more smartphone users to win this great game of who's going to be the quote-unquote king of the smartphone and have all the information of the universe at their disposal. So the story itself should be very interesting, and I look forward to seeing how it continues to grow and develop. P times 6 was good, as we got the performance of Melanin, I think it is, the rival of Mimin, as we see that she wants to perform in a similar way to Mimin and wants Mimin to acknowledge her as being number one, as she wants to just beat Mimin in a manner of speaking. That's sort of what I got out of it. And things are interesting as this rivalry continues to boil over, as I can't tell whether they're fighting each other in similar ways of both wanting to beat each other but yet wanting to love each other. It's very bizarre, but they're fighting tooth and nail to see which one's better, I guess. Mostly Melanin, but the next chapter should be interesting, as we'll get to see who the winner, I guess, is, as again, Mimin is stepping away from all of it, but we'll see. Again, the chapters are good, and I look forward to seeing whatever madness happens next. And Elusive Samurai was good, as we get to see the main heroes find out just how powerful the main villains are of this particular battlefield, as now it's looking like they're going to have quite the fight on their hands, as the villains here are extremely powerful. So it should be exciting to see if the heroes can win in this disadvantaged state, or if they just straight up have to lose here and run away. We'll see. I look forward to seeing what the next few chapters have to bring to this already very good story. So that was all of the chapters. Again, they were all very good, very much carried by the main quote-unquote section of chapters, as I felt these back half ones were a little bit more lacking than usual, outside of maybe Super Smartphone and the Elusive Samurai. But some good overall, and next week should be very fun, as I think a lot of these stories are really going to start ramping up soon, as well as we get some fresh starts for a couple of other ones, from One Piece to Black Clover potentially, as well as Undead and Mission Yozakura, as well, as each of them seems to be looking like they're going to start their next arcs sooner rather than later. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and as always, thank you for watching.